I'm a journalist, first of all. I'm a journalist writing about innovation. I write for La Repubblica and several different websites, like the most important is Startup Italia, which is the most important Italian platform for startups. And I've been appointed digital champion in Italy 18 months ago. And I have a great passion for innovation, and now I'm working a lot in Europe, in the European Commission, to contribute to build a better ecosystem for startups.
Myrna.
And sorry, one more word. I've been co-curating the European Maker Fair in Rome for 3 years, together with Massimo Banzi, which is the co-founder of Arduino. In Rome, it's a major event with like 100,000 people, thinkers, hobbyists, also startuppers making startups about hardware, open hardware, and into IoT, all this stuff. So it's really a big event. It's called labeled European Maker Fair. So you're all invited in October.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Myrna RODRIGUEZ-HAUSSEGUY, and I work for Europe Unlimited / Tech Tour. So we have a big network of entrepreneurs, more than 2,000 entrepreneurs and investors across Europe. We have 15 to 20 events per year. So what we do is that we connect entrepreneurs with investors. Emerging companies is Europe Unlimited, growth companies is Tech Tour. Tech.eu is also a partner of us. But today I'm here as part of the co-organizing team of Startup Europe Week.
Thank you. Mari?
Hello, my name is VAVULSKI. I come from Estonia and I'm the head of Startup Estonia. Startup Estonia seeks to supercharge Estonian brain startups which have the potential to make it in the world. And we are sort of like an umbrella organization uniting the whole startup ecosystem in Estonia and helping to develop it further to make it really the best one in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to kick off the discussion by disagreeing with Igor, who at the very beginning of the event today said that at the end of the day, the goal should be to empower local entrepreneurs, meaning if you go to a countryside, I think Poland was the example that you used. If you go in the countryside in Poland, you should be able to, you know, kickstart startups just by encouraging entrepreneurs to start up. So I would argue that that's actually not the case. I think if you are honest, then starting a business is probably going to be an option. Growing a business is going to be incredibly difficult. It's already quite difficult in major hubs. It's next to impossible in smaller hubs. The reason being is that you need support, not just from regions or local government to set up the business, taxes, whatever, regulation, but also, you know, in terms of attracting talent, attracting capital, having local meetups to exchange thoughts and share best practices with other entrepreneurs. So I'd argue that it's easy to start a business, but it's not as easy to grow a business. So maybe someone will disagree with me now. Who wants to disagree? Igor, you can feel free to jump into.
I'm not part of the panel, but well, okay. So I think the goal. I mean, I think not every entrepreneur is going to have like a scale up or a unicorn or whatever. I think when we talk about entrepreneurship, we're talking about something bigger, not only a tech startup that can grow exponentially, which I totally agree with you. I think a company entrepreneur that needs to scale up absolutely needs to be in a hub that has the connections, and of course, and there are very few connections in the world where they can actually succeed in that aspect, but that doesn't mean that someone is starting a restaurant, which is also an entrepreneur, cannot be successful locally. So I actually am more into making people be sustainable in terms of if they can have their 50, 60,000 euros a year and survive and be an entrepreneur because it's as honest as being a great tech entrepreneur. I think that's fair. And that's actually Startup Europe Week is all about it as well, in the sense that, of course, we have startup in the name, but we're not only talking about tech, we're talking about entrepreneurship in general. And I think I agree with you on that, on the scale up, but I think entrepreneurship is much bigger than tech startups. And I think every time we get a lot of attention to this tiny niche of startups, and entrepreneurship is much bigger than that.
Great. We have some more disagreement from Riccardo.
A small disagreement, very polite. But I mean, I want to make the case for Italy because I'm so glad that I've been invited together with Estonia, probably just because Estonia is the startup nation. And Italy is considered the country for pizza and Ferrari, so not the right startup nation. And also you can see this map. In the map, Italy is not mapped. I mean, it's just out of the, I don't know why. I mean, it's always the same. Also, when Nesta published a report about the startup cities several months ago in Lisbon, Rome and Milan were just below the 20s, the position number 20. I remember Milan 21st and Rome 28, so not just the very high position. And so I think in Italy things are changing a lot. I mean, also the role of policy has been important. Policy making, which we have a much better legislation. Started 2 governments ago. I mean, in Italy we change a government every year. So 2 governments ago is just 3 years ago. With the government of Monti, they started a brand new legislation. It's much easier in Italy to start a startup. It's much easier to fail. Easier. You can fail fast and succeed soon, as they say in Silicon Valley. It's easy to get the investment. It's easier to have tax reliefs. It's easier also if you are a foreign coming from a country not in the EU to come to Italy and to get a visa. It's called Startup Visa, and we are the first country, I think, in Europe, in the European Union, to get this kind of legislation. So it's very important. I mean, we're not a paradise for startups, but we have a growing movement, more than 5,000 in the official register now. It's a lot. It's important. We have the same problem that you face in every country in Europe. I've read the Startup Europe blog post in the Financial Times a couple of weeks ago after Davos, and they say that in Europe the problem is that the startups don't scale up, don't grow fast enough. It's the same in Italy. What can we do with these 5,000 startups? I mean, we have to focus on our DNA, for sure. For instance, for financial services, for fintech, it's better if you go to London. But if you have to start a startup in the food sector, in the automotive sector, in the design sector, in the IoT sector, probably Italy is a good place where to start your startup. You have to find the right destiny, the right DNA for every single regional ecosystem. Italy is good in something, and France in something else, and Estonia for something else. So we have to find your own destiny in your history, I think.
Well, thank you for making the case for Italy.
But actually, I think I'm going to disagree with all of you and agree with all of you, because I don't necessarily see that you have to be in a traditional hub to make it, or to be in a global position. You have companies, for instance, in Budapest, you have Prezi, who is an amazing success story for the ecosystem. And, you have a lot of companies, even, TransferWise coming out of Estonia, and companies that come from not traditional hubs that are being able to position themselves in a global position in the global market. So those are very good examples of how to start businesses. But they have to have access to something. They either have access to funding, they either have access to talent, they either have access to, one-stop shop, all these initiatives that we see in the regions of the one-stop shop, all of these things that are working well in certain regions. I think you need to have access to the entrepreneurial spark more than anything. You need to be able to start your business. Now, the challenge comes when a business is going to scale up. Many of them, including TransferWise, needed to go to London to scale up. So this is the reality of things, and this is what we need to work in, and how to better connect the access to funding, the access to talent, and all these accesses so that everybody in Europe can benefit from it.
So we're talking about different ingredients that's needed to make a healthy ecosystem. So Mari, I would like to hear from you. What's good in Estonia and what's not good in Estonia?
I think the best thing we have in Estonia are the people. They are hardworking, really ambitious, and try to make the best out of everything. So you have to have a really good density of really good people who actually are willing to make the difference. And sure, we are a really good test platform. You can try out your ideas and everything works there. As Andrus Ansip was saying, we have all e-services which are actually working, not just hype that there is something there. And since Skype was sold in 2005, it have had a tremendous effect in Estonia. Currently, the new founders of new startups are from Skype or from other big IT companies. So you need to have like a homegrown big companies which are giving you a lot of talent, people who actually know how to build international businesses. So I believe people are the ones who make the difference.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add to that. So with the let's say, look in Estonia from the other side of Gulf of Finland, so north. So what we in Finland have learned from that. So I think at the moment, so Estonia has been really one of our, okay, maybe I'll put this so I'll have my own face there. So that Estonia has been one of the kind of catalyzing factors for Finland as well. So seeing so much new ways to operate with both and especially public sector processes, they've done very differently, and that has really an impact. But now what we are seeing and what I want to contribute to this kind of, do we need this kind of ecosystems and hubs? Definitely we do need, because the more you have on one region kind of examples, people doing different things, you can learn, you can collaborate, you can build your alliances, some strategic alliances. Actually, the faster you can get to the global market. And I think this is the case, and this is the key thing, that you have to be ready to move fast, or really to be on doing these new things faster than some of the others. Because what I learned in my history is really that many of the new great ideas, someone is thinking and creating very much the same kind of things. We have very often already in the 80s, we had excellent teams working in some software development in Finland, and I was operating with the university, giving funding them, just to realize that in the US they had just coming to their market with the same kind of product. So we were not thinking we were not really born global early enough, so we need to go there. And this is one of the things, and there you need the collaboration mentality, and that is what we often see, that the city can be creating the right kind of favorable environment for that. But then it's very often it's a university, polytechnic, applied science university, vocational schools who can really create and help this, informing these kind of hubs where these new innovations flow.
Yep. So collaboration and working together as hubs is something that's actually true to my heart. When I launched Tech.eu about 2 years ago, you still have that today. You have this constant juxtaposition, like how's Silicon Valley doing compared to Europe, or how's Europe doing compared to Silicon Valley? And they have Berlin versus London, who's the biggest hub and who's raising more funding, and this. And I'm watching Riccardo defend Italy like it's necessary, which it really shouldn't be. Because I have one investor, Kieran O'Leary from Early Bird in Berlin, who actually just started a new venture capital fund. But he commented to me once that this whole process of comparing yourself against someone is necessary in a way, but also very counterproductive. Especially, he was talking about Silicon Valley in particular. If you drive down the 101 from San Francisco to Mountain View, it might take you longer than taking a plane from Berlin to London. And his argument was, building interconnected hubs in Europe is probably more important than trying to be number one in for whatever metric you choose to compare yourself against, because you're always going to find something that you're better at or worse at than another hub. So this whole process of comparing hubs to one another, as a neutral observer, as a journalist, seems very, very counterproductive to me. Myrna, any thoughts on that? I know you have some.
Well, one of the challenges that we faced, if I can share that with you, is that there were certain regions, that weren't jumping out of their seats to be part of this. And that's what's really surprising, because, a lot of the regions and the cities, they saw value immediately. And you can see it in London, in Paris. I mean, they're used to this. So they have, several events every day, the whole week. So they were jumping out of the seats. We had, I think, 18 co-organizers fighting to organize something in London. So it was really surprising, really nice to see. But it's usual coming from London. But when we approached certain cities and regions, there was sort of resistance, because they said, well, this is what we do all the time. Why would I do it at a pan-European level? I mean, this is my daily business. I don't need to do that within the week of February. So, it was a hard job trying to convince them, actually you do, because it's not only about the entrepreneurs that are in your region, It's also about the hubs that are seeing you. And this is a way, and I think this is an added value of what we're doing with Startup Europe Week, is that we're connecting the ecosystems. Yes, of course, the Committee of Regions is already doing that very well, because they're actually saying these regions are having initiatives that are worth inspiring others. But so this is a sort of collaboration to that and adding to that and saying, listen, guys, these are the agendas of all the regions. These are the initiatives that are going to be presented in all of the regions. How can you get inspired? And we saw that actually with the universities. We have a LinkedIn group for all the co-organizers, and we've asked them to be active, and there was actually Nigel Adams from the University of Cork who asked, how many universities are in here, and how are you collaborating with the ecosystem? So that was really nice, because this collaboration is actually very sort of, you know, bottom up, and I think that that contributes nicely to whatever is being done at the Committee of Regions or the European Commission. It's also to have the local people working together towards, you know, collaborating and connecting the hubs.
Got it. Riccardo, question for you. What do you think the role of the media is here? Because everyone knows you kind of have to showcase your local heroes, not just on a local level, but actually internationally as well. So do you think the media plays a large role in this?
Yeah, I think it's very important also. I mean, actually, being a journalist, I believe that in the role of media is critical in the building this kind of ecosystem, and it's kind of. I think that storytelling is part of story making, of the fact that we are changing the culture of a nation of people, and for instance, for a long time in Italy, people, and especially young people, were waiting to be hired, and they didn't. They were not aware of the fact that they could create their own job. Through digital revolution, now it's critical. For instance, now, last week, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, was in Rome to meet our Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi, and they launched the first European iOS school for developers. And there's quite a controversy in Italy about the fact that it's a school, or it's just for people, or are really 600 people working. I mean, they're not working, they're students, so they're learning a job, but they're not going to be hired by anybody. I don't know. This is the controversy. There are real jobs or just people skilled. I think that in the digital revolution, the lines are blurred. I mean, if you have the right skills, the right digital skills, then you can get the jobs. And also for journalists, it's complicated, because I mean, really there is a controversy in Italy. I mean, it's important that Apple is opening a school in Italy to teach developers to be great developers or not. I think it's critical. I mean, without digital skills, we cannot make it. And so in this digital revolution, I mean, it's important that journalists and media play the right role. They have to tell stories that it is possible to create your own job. It's possible to kick off a startup quite easily. It is not going to be successful all the time. On the contrary, 9 times out of 10, probably you're going to fail fast. And you have to start again because you learned the lesson. Also in Italy, this is very important, because when you fail in Italy, you have a kind of stigma that you failed, and so you're somehow guilty of something. And so journalism and media in general have to play a major role in shifting this culture in a digital way. And in a digital way doesn't mean using an app or using a website. I'm talking about values. The values of the digital society are completely different. You create your own future, and you can make with other people together, networking with other people. That's why it's so important to create this kind of networks of hubs all over Europe.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not an Italian thing. I think it's a European thing. Talk about failure in a very negative way. I think you see that everywhere, unfortunately. And we're also, Tech.eu is part of a project from the European Commission that actually tries to map, it's called the LIFE project. We're trying to map failure in Europe. Why does it happen? And why do people, talk about failure in a certain way? So that should be interesting to watch. We're going to put out some research, I think, in 2 or 3 months. So, Mari, question for you. We've talked about the role of the media. How about the role of the government? Estonia is very well known for being very digital savvy and very tech proactive in its approach. How does it help startups specifically?
I think Estonia is a perfect example. Government as a startup, they are launching different activities really fast. If they don't work, then they will make the pivot. So removing regulative barriers, actually making legislation really startup friendly. Last month we presented to our Prime Minister the startup visa conception, and it seems that we will make it work by 2017. Also how to taxation of options are in Estonia. So all sort of legislative barriers that there are in Estonia to make Estonia not as a hub for startups, we are trying to remove all of that. Certainly we will look, are there any misuses or what kind of effect does it have, but still the regulative barriers. And also you can support all grassroots initiatives, sort of like Startup Europe wikis. It's not an intentional thing that every incubator needs to do an event. Sort of finding these people or organizations who are willing to actually make really normal networks. These will last forever, I think, so you can't push anything. So government is removing barriers and helping to launch grassroots initiatives and being really able to also pivot, being as a startup itself.
Very brief follow-up question about the e-citizen. Igor was showing off his. I have one too. Neither of us have used it so far, which sort of brings me to my obvious question: how is this e-citizenship going to help entrepreneurs in Europe?
It gives all of the entrepreneurs worldwide the possibility to operate a business from Estonia. So all of you could relocate to Estonia, come to Estonia, and since Estonia is a small country and we only have 1.3 million inhabitants, we are virtually growing it bigger. You have to keep in mind that e-residency is also a startup initiative, sort of. So we are in a beta phase. We have launched the e-residency and the card itself, but currently we are developing the services. So the first good reason to use it is a non-EU resident. You can come to Europe and relocate your business and have e-residency in Estonia using all the infrastructure that we have used for decades. So start a business in Estonia. This is the most obvious way to use it now.
But it's cold there. In the winter.
It's cold here.
It's cold here too. But I was going to talk about Italy actually.
It's much warmer than in Finland.
It's true. But Italy, aside from the climate, also has an initiative. You also mentioned it very briefly, but let's talk about this a little bit more. The startup visa, which Italy was one of the first countries to actually implement it. And we, as Tech.eu, were also lobbying for a Europe-wide startup visa that might take some time. But Italy already has one. So how does that work?
Actually, it's at the very beginning. We started like 18 months ago. We received like less than 100 applications worldwide. And it's interesting where they come from. For instance, Iran, Russia, Israel, United States, not Europe that much. So probably Europeans don't feel the need to come to Italy to start a business, but from different countries. I met a very interesting Iranian engineer who's moving to Cosenza, which is a city in Calabria, in the south, not the richest south of Italy, not the most beautiful south, but there is a great university there, and he's starting a startup about clean tech, very interesting. And so I think it's moving pretty well. But it's the beginning of a process. I think it's important that we can attract talents from different countries, so not just to have this kind of brain drain that Italy still has. And so I think it's a good legislation. It's working pretty well, but actually the figures are not that high yet.
No, you can argue the same about the e-citizenship. I think about 7,000 so far. So we'll see once it leaves beta, it goes into production phase, I guess. Let's bring the discussion back to Startup Europe Week. Myrna, how do you think? Because this is the first Startup Europe Week. What do you expect from it? What do you want to get out of it?
That it continues. I think, that this is only the start and that we make it something that it's much larger than Startup Europe, for sure. Then it's much larger than anything that is related to the Committee of Regions of the EC, that this takes a life on its own. And that we're able to accomplish that mission of helping every entrepreneur in little cities. But mostly, I think, is that we all sort of align in the mission. And that I saw a lot I think that whenever you have a mission that is clear and everybody sort of abides by this ambition, it's quite easy. Because you wouldn't have been able to gather, 400 co-organizers in such a little time, and with this team of high-performing volunteers, limited resources to say the least, if we didn't have a mission. And so what happened is that everybody that didn't align with the mission just sort of happened to fall from the project. So that's quite nice when you have a mission of helping entrepreneurs. And it also helps that, if you see everything as we're a true digital single market. We need to strive to that. It's no longer about your city. It's no longer about your region. It's no longer about that entrepreneur that is trying and struggling and providing everything for them. That you should do. But you also need to start thinking about a digital single market, because this is where our future is. This is what we need to strive for. So I think this is only the beginning, and this is what I hope for Startup Europe Week, is that it's only the first edition of many, and that it takes alive on its own, that not only sort of agencies belonging, or public servants, or people dealing with startups, but all sorts of entrepreneurs, scaled ups as well. Any sort of SME can also benefit from something like this.
You mentioned this, and Igor mentioned it before. You had limited resources, limited time. Suppose that you didn't have that, unlimited resources, unlimited time. What do you think the numbers would have been, or what would you have done differently if you had more resources?
I think if we would have had more resources, meaning probably more time, more people, I think we would have been able to make this a humongous thing, just because people were jumping out of their seats to be able to organize something in their city, because there's an eagerness. We're all conscious that we need to do this, and this is what we need to do to foster entrepreneurship. We need to build a culture of entrepreneurs, and it can be done. You can do anything as a government. You can do the one-stop shop that they're doing in Catalonia. You can do maybe the guarantees that are doing in Berlin. It's much easier to find funding mechanisms. You can develop, in Helsinki, they have brilliant young entrepreneurs trainings, in Ireland as well. So all these things you can do, but at the end of the day, you need to spark that fire of entrepreneurs wanting to do their own business, and you can do that through role models, for instance, but you can do it just by being excited about it, and asking the regions, let's pull together on one single week and not only celebrate entrepreneurship. I think we're over that. I think that the US is very good at doing that, but actually concrete actions. What are we doing locally to help you? And so if we would have had more resources, I think it would have been very, very large. We actually had to, let some cities go because we didn't have the time to help them solve the problem. So I think that would have been a bit more smoothly, and hopefully for the next year, then it'll work differently.
I was just going to say, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Maybe I'll just add a few ideas, because when we at the Committee of the Region, we see that why the cities and regions are needed to implement, let's say, some of the nice dreams or plans of Europe 2020. It's really that it's a concrete action happens there at the city. But it's not, unfortunately, it's not the city itself, but city can accommodate, encourage, assist, and with this entrepreneurship, it can really be the kind of real bottom-up movement, because it's the entrepreneurs, not the Chamber of Commerce to organize, because that's these kind of things. Positively, we have these many of the entrepreneur kind of traditional organizations supporting the business development. But let especially the young generation, let them and let you to do that, and the age is not the issue, but the mentality on that. And that makes a lot of sense with our experiences in the Helsinki region and other parts, but other parts as well. So we would need to ask immediately, so what is the European value added on having the European Week? And we need then okay, it builds new partnerships, it opens new ideas, because people with different cultures, different experiences, different disciplines, whatever, so they bring some new fresh ideas as well. So you can combine, and today you can really move faster towards this digital single market. So doing that together. As said here several times, you don't need to have your best partners in your own home city or next door to your office. You don't even need the office, because the office is your network, that's your brain. So that makes a lot of sense. And just want to add one thing, because I need to leave as well, so that what we realized I've been part of the university system, I've been in politics a long time, but working there, running this, I was as well a managing director for a small university company, although that was already 25 years ago, because we needed new instruments. So we established an instrument to run certain international activities. For some, it was easier to do officially as part of the university. So UNIT, Lifelong Learning Institute, Dipoli, finally a big institute with more than 100 people employed to work there, because we needed to earn our money. But then for certain activities, we needed much faster activities, so we established a company there. And then we had the one UNESCO NGO, non-governmental organization, to operate international. So for different purposes, you need different activities, and that's what I'm seeing as well today in the startup world with the young generation. So they have many companies because they don't know what will be the big. So focus on something, start creating, build that with your peers, with your colleagues, with your potential future partners. So be open for these avenues. And what we strongly need, the role of the media there, is this positive, because many need to fail to learn from that process. But what if the city council, we decide, okay, we'll reserve 100,000 euros for our startups in our city. So most likely the media will kill the politicians who made this kind of initiative, because we are using taxpayers' money for the benefit of only something, or most likely for just letting some people to fail faster. So media needs to bring these positive elements, the success stories, but that's the nice thing, because media is not anymore only the printed media. Although through the printed media, the newspapers, there you read the stories and so on, but it has a lot to do with the local culture. So encourage this kind of positive testing, trialing, experimenting, moving, and so on. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Marco, and thank you for joining us as well.
Sure, thanks.
So the one thing that I would like to also talk about is, because the Startup Europe Week is all about discovering how, on the regional level, do we support, empower, encourage local entrepreneurs and help them scale their businesses. But also I want to talk about how to create new entrepreneurs, which is something that I feel doesn't get discussed often enough, is the education part. How good are we in Europe at actually teaching our young people that they can start their own businesses? And at what age should we start? And what should we teach them in university and high schools, rather than only technical skills or management skills? Also, just teaching them how to start their own business and how it's a viable option for them as well. So this is an open question. And do you have any thoughts on how education in Europe in general should behave?
In Estonia, there is, I think it's an EU-wide thing, that the first full week of October is Entrepreneurship Week. So throughout the week in entire of Europe, they have different events. And in Estonia last week, what was the biggest initiative was like entrepreneur in the school. So we listed more than 100 Estonian schools where real entrepreneurs went to school and gave lectures there. So this is one of the way of looking at it. The people who have the real experience actually showing it also to the young people and inspiring them. Because when an entrepreneur is talking about entrepreneurship, it's a lot different than a lecturer is doing it. So this could be one of the initiatives, or one of the grassroots things, because entrepreneurs have a lot of experience and they are willing to share it. So maybe also other countries could use that initiative as an example, or try to implement into the curriculums in schools. And I think it should be, or could be done from the first grades already. You don't need to be in, I don't know, high school to start learning about entrepreneurship, because this is a mindset, not just a set of skills that you need to have to really be an entrepreneur.
Completely agreed. Riccardo, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, actually, in Italy, entrepreneurship is just it's in our DNA with some weak points. The first one is, I mean, we have around a bit more than 4 million enterprises. Awesome. But like 95% are small enterprises, small companies. It means that in Italy, everybody wants to be the CEO of himself, of herself. The difference now with the digital world is that you can choose if you want to open like a cafeteria or a restaurant or a store, or you can launch a startup and trying to be global, to scale up. And so it's a different attitude. It's much more risky, but it's much more interesting if you can try this different path. Now, what can we do for this cultural shift? Now, in October, it has been launched a national plan for digital schools, for digital education. And in January, the government has appointed one digital champion in every school in Italy. There are around more than 8,000 digital champions. They're called animatori digitali. They're people like teachers that have the role to try to implement this digital culture in the curriculum of the school or the children or the students. So it's very important. They just started in their role, but it's very important. So I think we are doing. I mean, it's important to start from schools where young people can realize that they have this kind of opportunities. They don't have to wait for a job. They can create their own job. I think that, for instance, it's very important if you can just show during the classes a clip from the movie The Social Network, where you see the dean of the Harvard University when there is kind of controversy with Mark Zuckerberg, and the Winklevoss brothers go up and to complain, and he replies, people don't come to Harvard to find for a job, but to create their own job, to create jobs for the others. And this is exactly the point, and exactly the kind of message that we have to pass to the young students in every country.
Agreed. Now let's talk about one other ingredient of making a healthy ecosystem was funding, is capital. We've already kind of touched on it, but we'll talk about it some more. So I would argue, from what I've seen at least, is if you start a business and you're early stage startup or you're pre-Series A, you're still kind of finding your product market fit. I don't think in Europe you have lots of problems finding capital, at least not in the major hubs. It should be quite obvious to everyone that there are lots of options compared to used to be only professional investors. Now you have crowdfunding, you have accelerators, you have government initiatives, grants, subsidies, etc. So I think in an early stage, it's not that hard to find capital. If you have a half-decent idea and some passion about what you do, then it shouldn't be a problem at all. Where the problem lies in Europe is obviously in the growth capital. Post-Series C, Series D rounds is very, very hard to come by, at least in Europe itself. So oftentimes you see international investors coming in and taking up the real opportunities. Also oftentimes, bringing the entrepreneurs and the teams back home, whether it be US or Asia, etc. So Myrna, this is a question for you, because with Europe Unlimited, obviously with Tech Tour, you have a lot of experience talking to these investors, especially international ones. So what are some of the things you've learned over the years?
Well, there's no secret sauce, because if we already did that, then everybody, it would be much easier. It really is a challenge, and I think that entrepreneurs they need to understand that as you were said, being an entrepreneur is hard. Well, the fundraising journey, it's even harder. So to start a business is very hard, but to scale it up is just extremely, extremely hard. And so we see that in Europe because the success stories that we have, such as Spotify or Delivery Hero, all these unicorns that are coming, they're dispersed. You have them in Berlin, you have them in London, in Stockholm, and so the sort of the message is that if you want to scale up, you need to go to London, and that is not necessarily true. There's certain hubs where you can go, and it's all about the network. It's all about connection. And in Tech Tour, what we have is now the International Investor Club, and so it's sort of connecting all of the hubs and seeing where the new technology sectors are going and all these things. I don't have any particular advice to startups that want to scale up, because the market is just changing all the time. 5 years ago, we didn't see accelerators. And now, I think there are something close to 200 accelerator programs just in Spain. So, you can imagine, will the accelerators survive? Is there an accelerator bubble? That's another discussion. Is the revenue model for accelerators a good revenue model? We have yet to see. But but the market is changing. And so, you know, whereas before there were not so many business angels, now I think we've never seen as many business angels as we see now. So, you know, things are changing. I would just say, you know, just keep doing what you're doing and give back to your ecosystem. So, you know, when you give back, you get everything multiplied. So, you know, people like the people from TransferWise, they're giving back through Wise Guys. And you have the people from Prezi that I mentioned before. They have an NGO, actually, just going back a little bit to, you know, the education, the role model. I think it's important that we touch up on that because role models are really important. And these entrepreneurs that were successful, they're giving back in being a role model, but they're also giving back in funding. And so this is quite important that we foster that, you know, people are giving back financially as well.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I've also, and this is more than anecdotal, but I've also, it seems like the investors in Europe, even pan-European investors, have kind of woken up to the fact that entrepreneurs are no longer coming to them or coming to their city. And one very recently told me that they were comparing the travel expenses that they had for their investment team over the last 10 years, and it's gone up by about 50–60% the last 2 years alone, because more and more they realize that they have to be, you know, in different hubs and travel there and talk to local entrepreneurs. They're no longer going to come to them per se. And also it's become easier for entrepreneurs to kind of shop where they start their own businesses. One well-known example is the SoundCloud guys, who basically had a list, literally a list, written down, like, where should we start SoundCloud? Is Barcelona, this, and that's a certain criteria in mind. And they just went to all these cities, talked to a few people, and ended up choosing Berlin. And now they're seen as one of the, you know, Berlin unicorns and famous companies from out there. But it might as well just have been Barcelona or Stockholm for that matter. They just shopped around. So I think you're going to see more of that. So my question to Mari is, if you, at Startup Estonia, how do you position yourself to international investors?
In Estonia, we have made a crowdsourced list about all the investments made in Estonian startups. It doesn't mean that only the investments made by Estonian investors are included to that list, but also international ones. And we are currently trying to build like a startup pipe drive, the information about all Estonian startups in different startup phases, because maybe there are some really early stage companies that aren't yet companies but could be interesting somehow to investors. So we are providing all that information to all investors who are actually asking that from us. So our portfolio companies, also the other ones. So I think this is the thing that we can do. So when this event started here, there was like an announcement that throughout Startup Europe Week, we are trying to also map the whole startup ecosystem in Europe to find out what are the ecosystems and what are the startups. So if you as a startup are not on angel list or costs, you're not there. You need to be somewhere to really be presented. So I need to know about you, and then I can share that information. So I think this is like a call for all entrepreneurs to fill up their profiles on different big platforms where investors are usually looking for you, because if you don't present yourself, then nobody knows you. So if I don't know about some of the Estonian startups, I can't be like an advocate to actually promote you.
We always say the same to the European startups in general. Sometimes they'll complain like, oh, why don't you ever write about Kosovo startups? So have you ever contacted me? Oh, no. Well, yeah, you kind of have to reach out proactively as well. Actually, that's all the time for the panel we have. Some good news. I think we're going to succeed in tuning into Dublin in about 3 minutes. I'm looking at Filippo. But for now, we're going to close the panel. Thank you very much for the discussion. Some very interesting thoughts. Thank you very much.
Should we leave?
You can stay.